Hello and welcome to the Kundalini podcast. That was Zen. This is Tao. I'm Vivek Kovik. Namaste. This is episode 100. So, a century of episodes. I'm quite proud that I could accomplish this. So, let's make this about something special. Today I'm going to talk about some of the esoteric, deeper meanings of things that are in scripture from an awakened point of view. I've mentioned in the past about the Samudra Manthan story about gods and demons fighting using a mountain and tying a snake to it to churn the ocean of consciousness. And that is an allegory to the Kundalini process as it unfolds when the Shakti, the energy, the force awakens in an individual. All these allegorical mythological tales start to make more sense on deeper levels. A lot of Hindu stories that I grew up with, that my grandma told me, made more sense after my awakening, and they are still making sense. Another thing I realized is the vehicle used by a deity. So if a mouse is the deity of the elephant god Ganesha, or Nandi, the bull, is a deity for Lord Shiva. These have a special significance. It means that the human form is of that representation of the vehicle, the mouse or the bull. That's how that human being is. A bull is obstinate, easy to anger, and also very docile when you know how to handle it. So that kind of a human being, easy to anger but docile and a bit of a simpleton, channeled the right way with a Kundalini awakening or through spiritual means, awakens the inner divinity, which is the vibration of Shiva. In the same way, different parts of the animal kingdom represent different deities. So there is a goddess that sits on a lion or a tiger, and which is why I mentioned the Devi Kavach. This is the goddess in her strongest form, and the Kundalini energy is the divine feminine from the Da Vinci Code, if you have read that. Again, allegorical, esoteric references to the awakening of the Kundalini. The vehicle, let's say your favored deity is Lord Ram, and the vehicle is a humanized ape form called Hanuman, which is the ape within all of us, where we are carried everywhere by our temptations, our weaknesses. And praying to Lord Ram makes it a more refined version of that same person, not distracted, not tempted, and able to restrain themselves and become the highest version of themselves, which is divine, approaching the divine. It has been a steady progress on Earth as bipeds and more complex animals arrived on the scene. The awakening of the consciousness and reaching that point of divinity attained through the human form or whatever form the consciousness was in at that era. And we are at the downstream highest point of evolution, apex predator or apex living organism. Predator is a negative term. Apex living organism of this human ecosystem or this ecosystem on Earth. That apex creature is a human being. And getting there was a journey through elevation of consciousness. Now, how this happens on Earth is through human beings struggling along with wild animals, sometimes having to defeat them, sometimes having to exercise dominion over their turf. And humanity evolved by using tools, by growing stronger. All of this, after the Kundalini awakening, I realized was through elevation of consciousness at different levels. And these people with elevated consciousness who were like regular human beings. And then the process awakened within them, like that monolith in 2001 A Space Odyssey. And all these creatures watch transfixed as this monolith reveals things, which is Gnosis, post-awakening. Or the finger of Adam and God meeting, Michelangelo painting, which is the consciousness elevating, and now, divine consciousness is revealed, and that person is on a higher plane of existence, of consciousness, of thinking, of living. This process has been key to elevating the consciousness of the entire species, because knowledge of something that would have never been figured out, would have taken ages, years and years, centuries to find something just being available, and all of these paths go through what we have termed divinity and religion, and those things have become tales and fables, and people left behind things. Okay, how would an unawakened person understand this? Let me leave behind scripture so that they can guide themselves towards this state of consciousness. And that became yoga, that became different scriptures and manuals. Upon awakening, that path becomes very clear. This is how it happened. Because now I have access to the same gnosis that was attained by other people at different points in time. How it ties to this whole concept of a vehicle becoming a deity is the path given through all of these symbols. When you see the picture of a Hindu goddess, there are 4 arms, there are different weapons held, there are certain vehicles, there is a demon being crushed at the feet. That's the ego or worst tendencies. And that's how that vehicle arises to that level of divinity, or divinity descends into that person. So here is a easy way. These are the mantras for that deity. It is relevant to you. That is your inner nature. And how do you elevate yourself to that highest level? And I have mentioned the 4 forms of yoga which form integral yoga: Bhakti Yoga, Raj Yoga, Karma Yoga and Jnana Yoga. Using these different paths, and Bhakti Yoga is simply devotion or praying to a certain deity. Then elevating your consciousness to the highest form available through that conduit, that set of vibrations, and resonating to that, removing all the impurities within you, which are these baser instincts, temptations. Humanity has evolved by curbing the instinct for immediate pleasure, instant gratification, and being conservative in their approach. And a large part of that is curbing your instinct that makes you deviate from a set pattern. If you have created a discipline for yourself, a routine, a habit. And in the past, human beings had to do that out of necessity. You didn't eat if you didn't sow your crops at the right time. You didn't water them, and you didn't harvest them at the right time. If that didn't happen, according to a certain schedule set by nature, humanity had evolved to learn about those things. That took a long time. But you were following a pattern that was necessary for your survival. And we are slightly cut off from that in an industrial society. However, your actions and how to use your tools to the best of your ability necessitates thinking about the future and planning well. So, if my daughter wants to eat candy and she throws a tantrum and wants to go to the park and play with her friends, but you want to come back after an hour, but she still wants to keep playing. But you know that tomorrow she has school, tomorrow she has things to do, and then she'll be tired. So she needs to go to bed at a certain time and do her homework, etc. And the parent becomes the guiding force that guides a younger person through those stages where what they want immediately may not be the right thing for them. In the same way, humanity and civilization have evolved through these awakenings where there was a guiding principle revealed through divine gnosis in somebody who awakened with a Kundalini awakening and started seeing things on a completely different level, but still grounded in that same reality. Half your life you were still a human being making the same mistakes. And now, by some confluence of events, something that you did right, you got this awakening. Now you see things from a higher level. Inevitably, that path is about tolerance, patience, curbing your worst instincts, not giving in to temptation. And however that is encoded as commandments, as laws, scriptures, have to be updated to that individual where it's like, oh, this stuff not necessary anymore. It is dated for a previous era. It served us well. And what's the upgraded version of that we can use today to make our lives better and still curb our worst instincts? The worst instincts have still remained exactly the same through the centuries. The domination, power, the urge to be greedy with money, to hurt others, compete, and by whatever means necessary, accumulate that wealth and power. But it gets in the way of the greater good. And how do we harmonize our instincts to make money, to have power, to live a happy life, but also allow other people to thrive and have their own wishes fulfilled, have their own lives strengthened and become better? It's always a struggle between those two, the balancing act. You don't see the higher evolution and longer term benefit immediately when your senses are fooled. So, having a firm grounding in all the things that I've mentioned, positive affirmations, mantras, and devotion to your right deity, knowing that you're the vehicle moving towards higher consciousness through praying to and being devoted to this deity. The path to that through your methods makes you realize that how many times do I deviate from what is godly behavior that is for the right path, right things for me, that'll, make my life better, and immediate temptations. And it's a balancing act between those two. Even if you fail and then come back and go back to your own practice again, it is a success because that is just one failure. You can come back. And now the pattern of 10 other situations like that. Oh, this time I didn't fall for it. Okay, thank God for that one failure. Now it showed me where my weakness was. Let me strengthen myself in my practice of devotion, yoga, whatever. That happens only when you have, in your spare time, put in these mantras, put in these values, and decided to follow them, regardless of how things around you change. And then the reward becomes obvious at a much later point. And then you find out that, even that was temptation. What felt so right, and I needed to do this. Like the kid feels the need to eat that candy bar. Or, stay and play with their friends for just a few more minutes. It seems so exciting. Oh, one day you realize, thank God, I had a mother, I had a father, or somebody who took me home and made me do the homework. Or, whatever habits I've picked up. And I'm grateful for that. Grateful for having that upbringing or that guidance throughout my life. That's the feeling you start getting when you're devoted to God. Follow these principles. Start making that transformation within you. And it's unfolding with this amazing higher knowledge, this Gnosis. Put it into good use for your life. The first thing you start noticing is how much better you are at handling the things that you were bad at in your previous life, pre-awakening. Oh, right there, that is success. Then you start building up on the skills and strengths given by this ability. And now your higher self, closer to that deity and further away from the vehicle that started off. And then you realize that these values are working, these mantras are working even when your conscious mind has slipped up somewhere and you have lost your footing. It saves you, brings you back, and you only have to go back and start doing whatever your routine was again, mantras and meditation. Just that realization of everything that I regretted, something that a missed opportunity, something I didn't do well, somewhere where I failed, where I felt ashamed of my behavior, all of that is not going to happen now because I have put this system in place. It's a great feeling by itself. I hope you found this helpful. Peace, love, blessings. This is Vivek Kovekar signing out. Be well.